Tune in, iHeart, and on Odyssey. Now, from the Signature Bank Studios, this is Chicago's Morning Answer with Dan Proft and Amy Jacobson. America First with Sebastian Gorka today at 3, right before Sean Thompson at 4 on AM 560. The Answer.
Top of the morning, Dan and Amy. We brought this to you yesterday, had a bit of a discussion about it, but I think it bears a revisiting, particularly in light of our next guest, Heather MacDonald, because it's such a key observation about the nature of the trans movement. This is from Helen Joyce. She is an editor at The Economist, and it's a bit surprising she is because that is not exactly a conservative publication. But she sat down for an interview with former Portland State professor Peter Boghossian, and the conversation was in part about this social contagion called the trans movement. And here's what Helen Joyce had to say about it, why it is so pernicious and unrelenting and will continue to be unrelenting.
Something that you may not have thought of is that there's a lot of people who can't move on this, because that's the people who've transitioned their own children. So those people are going to be like, the Japanese soldiers who were on Pacific Islands and didn't know the war was over.
Right.
They've got to fight forever. This is another reason why this is the worst social contagion that we'll ever have experienced. A lot of people have done the worst thing that you could do, which is to harm their children irrevocably because of it. Those people will have to believe that they did the right thing for the rest of their lives, for their own sanity and for their own self-respect. So they'll still be fighting. And each one of those people destroys entire organizations and entire friendship groups. Like, I've lost count of the number of times that somebody has said to me of a specific organization that has got turned upside down on this. Oh, the deputy director has a trans child, or, oh, the journalist on that paper who does special investigations has a trans child, or whatever. The entire organization gets paralyzed by that one person. And it may not even be widely known at the organization that they have a trans child, but it will come out. Like, people will have sort of said it quietly, and now you can't talk truth in front of that person, and you can't. Because what you're saying is, you as a parent have done a truly, human rights abuse level of awful thing to your child that cannot be fixed. There are specific individuals who are really actively against women's rights here, and it's not known why they are, but I happen to know through the back channels that it's because they've trans their child. And so those people will do anything for the entire rest of their lives to destroy me and people like me, because people like me are a standing reproach to them. I don't want to be. I'm not talking directly to them. I don't spend my time bitching about them. But the fact is that just simply by saying we will never accept natal males in women's spaces, well, it's their son that we're talking about. And they've told their son that he can get himself sterilized and destroy his sexual function, and women will accept him as a woman. And if we don't, there's no way back for them and their child. They've sold their child a bill of goods that they can't deliver on, and I'm the one who has to be bullied to try to force me to deliver on it. So those people are going to be the people who will keep this bloody movement going, I'm sorry to say, because they've everything to lose, and it's a fight to the death as far as they're concerned.
Heather MacDonald has an excellent piece over at City Journal, city-journal.org, on this topic. Miss Netherlands is the face of Western self-cancellation, that is, anti-civilization. And as we talked about this story before, she's referencing the newly crowned Miss Netherlands, who's a dude. Heather MacDonald is the Thomas W. Smith Fellow at the Manhattan Institute. She's the author of The War on Cops, as well as The Diversity Delusion. Heather, thanks so much for joining us again. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Dan. My most recent book is When Race Trumps Merit. That's just out.
Oh, okay, great. When Race Trumps Merit. Got it. Put that in the queue as well. And your reaction to Miss Lynch and what she had to say about this social contagion.
It's extraordinarily insightful, and just means that we are in a very catch-22. We have the same leveraging of emotional hijacking when kids, people say, the pediatrics say, well, do you want a dead son or a live daughter?
Mm-hmm.
Making us responsible for the problems of of these families, of these pediatricians. We are not responsible, but they exercise this extraordinary power of us, just as we allow adolescents to wield the thing and have the thing that they most long for, which is power. You can put adults under your thumb by bashing them about your pronouns. You know, if they slip up, then you get to crush them. And so this is a heady thing for adolescents. And I would say this is the strangest moment in all of human history. In millennia of human history, there is nothing weirder than this point, when we have achieved so much in scientific understanding. You know, for millennia, it was simply a matter of common sense that there were the basic distinction in human life is between males and females. That common sense and experiential understanding has been backed up now by the most sophisticated genetic analysis. I mean, we understand that to change somebody's sex, you're going to have to change every trillion of their cells to change the chromosomes inside each cell. And so we understand this scientifically more than ever before, and yet we are now discarding that knowledge completely. It is absolutely bizarre, and I struggle for explanations. And I'm not usually prone to large conspiracy-type explanations for things, Dan, that would presuppose that people have gotten together and agreed on something that they clearly haven't. But the explanation that I ultimately reached to, because you can't be too radical in trying to explain this, is that it is about Western self-annihilation. It is another twist on the Great Replacement theory that for some reason Western civilization is trying to efface itself. And so we're trying to make as many young people of European stock either literally infertile. We are engaging in the most grotesque, sadistic, Frankenstein-like mutilation of their bodies, or the chemical castration, and the idea that puberty blockers are reversible is preposterous.
Yeah.
We're either rendering them incapable of reproducing or uninterested in reproducing. Because you see now, 40% of a class comes out as LGBTQ, again, because that is the quickest way to status and power. But basically, if they live by that, they are not going to be reproducing. And so the West is trying to shut itself down.
So, don't you think that this trans movement is I was told that it's the new civil rights movement of this generation? Do you believe that?
No, it's ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous. This is clearly a social contagion. It is willed behavior. The left gets to set the default all the time. They all of a sudden declare that we should regard mutilation as gender-affirming care, or that children should be exposed to grotesque sexualized content at age 5. That becomes the new norm. That becomes the new right. And if the conservatives or Republicans push back in ever so meek a manner, they're the ones who are waging the culture war. They're on the aggressive, and we're portrayed as the ones that are trying to upset some long-standing human arrangement. That's preposterous. Preposterous. This is an idea that represents a nanosecond of a millisecond of a fractional second of billions of years of human development. It is a insanity. It is not some matter of deep human rights. And for us to be at the behest and feeding young children with ideas, that somehow we're supposed to believe that gender is a construct, and we're also supposed to believe, as the California Department of Education tells us, that a 2-year-old already knows that he's a different sex, that he's been assigned at birth. Well, how does he know that? If these things are purely artificial constructs, he has no experience of being a female, And this would suggest that there's some kind of platonic form of male or femaleness, which with these toddlers somehow intuit. I reject that entirely, but the whole trans creed is completely self-contradictory. The definitions are circular. It toggles between a ridiculous constructivism with this ridiculous circumlocution that sex is assigned at birth, and then claims that would only make sense if there are somehow platonic ideals of what it is to be male and female. And it's also very weird, with this Miss Netherlands contest, and we've had so-called trans females in beauty pageants before. It turns out that when males want to be female, they gravitate to the most allegedly regressive stereotypes of female. The drag queen is just the embodiment of the shrill, hysterical, boobs out, 6-inch layers of fake eyelashes, arms waving, Phyllis Diller type hysteria.
Right. Yeah.
And it's the same with the trans beauty contest. They're all there with their come hither looks and whatnot. I thought we were supposed to be beyond that. I remember as a female in the 70s, getting all hot-headed about beauty contests, and you don't open the door for me, you male chauvinist pig. I'm
Right.
an equal female. I'm an equal male to you. And now, the quintessential female that we're all supposed to be celebrating, according to the trans head of the Miss Universe contest, is like Barbie doll pre-women's liberation. It's quite extraordinary.
And look at Dylan Mulvaney. I mean, women don't act like that. And if any of us, if you or I acted like that in our lives, we would lose our jobs.
Exactly. That's the drag queen. So you can't cultural appropriate. If you're interested as a painter in Japanese woodblock prints, oh, that's cultural appropriation. How dare you use Japanese traditions? But if you're a male and you want to gender appropriate female stereotypes, then you're going to be celebrated. So the only people who can get away with appropriation these days are drag performers and transvestites.
Well, and
Let me just say, yeah, go ahead.
No, and I mean, among the contradictions, the internal contradictions of this contagion, as you wrote about, to the extent that people say it's the civil rights issue of our time. Well, as you point out, we can eliminate it. All you have to do is have all men identify as women, and then there's no reason to have a discussion about women's rights.
Right. It makes the whole idea. They're in Congress now. They're trying to revive the Equal Rights Amendment in order to get another federal right to abortion. And Chuck Schumer said, well, if you look at how women are being mistreated today and the threat they're under, well, what's a woman? Men can all become women, so there will be no more oppressor, or women can all decide not to be women and be men. The idea of rights was immutable characteristics, which is to be black or Asian or white or male or female. But if this is a mutable characteristic, then you don't have the same claim to civil rights protections. But again, I mean, I just find it amazing. The left sets the agenda, the left sets the default, the left gets the new norms, and then we're all playing defense in coming way after the fact. So we're engaged now in these very earnest discussions about, well, what is the degree of gender dysphoria? Nobody was talking about this 10 years ago. Judith Butler, the queen of gender theory that got the ball rolling, said that in the 90s, nobody was talking about the trans. This is a recent concoction, and now we're all pretending like this is an absolute basic human truth. It is not. It is an absolute weird perversion of human understanding of biology, of truth, that is geared to shutting down Western civilization. The other side of the pincer movement of the self-annihilation is, of course, mass third world immigration. And so the West is simply trying to put itself out of existence.
On the topic of Western self-cancellation, self-cancellation, I should say. I wanted to get your take because I can't believe this is not getting more coverage. Education.
unbelievable.
You wrote your new book, When Race Trumps Merit. How about when it pertains to New York City teachers? $1.8 billion settlement. Teachers union washing money. New York City is doing $1.8 billion for teachers who failed basically a competency test because it was allegedly culturally biased, and the city has conceded the point, and the litigation is ending. You have teachers who've been interviewed, $2 million payouts that are unintelligible. They can't communicate, much less obviously pass this test. Your reaction to that settlement?
We are tearing down excellence. We are tearing down merit. We are making ourselves absolutely non-competitive on the world scientific stage, all because of the idea of disparate impact. We are tearing down every single meritocratic standard because it has a disparate impact on blacks. We are going around proclaiming ourselves racist. We are not. The problem is not the standards. It's the academic skills gap. It is absurd. This test was not racist. There are no longer racist, if there ever were, tests out there. All they are asking is the most basic command of arithmetic and reading skills. The problem is that here's the data, Dan and Amy. 66% of black 12th graders don't possess even partial mastery of basic 12th grade math skills, meaning they cannot do arithmetic, they cannot read a graph. 66%. The number of black 12th graders who are advanced in math nationally is too small to show up statistically. That's the problem. That's why they are not passing teachers' licensing exams, which are the easiest tests out there. And what I am so sick of hearing from black leaders is lower the standards on our behalf. How about they say, we will meet your standards? How about they tell their communities, study harder, take your textbooks home, pay attention in class, don't run the streets. But instead, the demand is always get rid of the tests. We've seen this in firefighting exams, police exams, basic cognitive skills to make sure police officers can follow and understand a patrol guide, or firefighters can figure out the chemistry of their firefighting materials. And those tests have disparate impact on blacks. Again, the tests are not racist. Merit, the concept of excellence, is not racist, and yet we would rather go around blaming ourselves for phantom racism than look at the pathologies of inner city culture that lead to disparate impact, and this is true in the criminal law as well. The reason we're tearing down prosecution, the reason we're not putting people in jail, the reason police are told not to make arrests, car stops, pedestrian stops, is because doing so will have a disparate impact on black criminals, not because the law is racist. The law is not racist. The problem is the behavior, not the standards.
She is Heather MacDonald, Thomas W. Smith Fellow at the Manhattan Institute, author of the following books. Pick them all up, including a new one, The War on Cops, The Diversity Delusion, and the newest, When Race Trumps Merit. Heather MacDonald, thanks as always. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Dan.
Yep. It's a pleasure, and she joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.
This is Chicago's Morning Answer.
Your show keeps me alive during the week. There's nobody I'd rather listen to between 5 and 9 in the morning than you guys.
On AM 560, The Answer. Turbulent times call for clear-headed insight. That's hard to come by these days, especially on TV. That's where we come in. The new Salem News Channel, the greatest collection of conservative minds, all in one place. Home to the people you trust. Dennis Prager, Mike Gallagher, Sebastian Gorka, and more. Refreshingly honest, always unfiltered. Streaming free on your TV 24/7. Intelligent analysis for intelligent people. Find what you're looking for at snc.tv. That's snc.tv.
What if being in recovery from a mental or substance use disorder was something we